Welcome back. This is the second lesson recording for IM2, January 14th, 2021. So what are we doing today? We are going to be studying a new unit. It's called Quadratic Equations. So far, we've been dealing with quadratic expressions and factoring. Now we're going to extend that to quadratic equations. Okay, so quadratic equation is now in the form of y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. So ax squared plus bx plus c, that's a quadratic expression. Now when we link it to y is equal to, or f of x is equal to, or 0 is equal to, now it becomes an equation. Okay, so what do they look like in graphs and in tables, and what are the important characteristics? And what type of situations are modeled by quadratic equations. And so we are going to be dealing with tables, graphs, equations, and situations. So graphs of quadratic equation, let's start by studying the simplest quadratic equation. The simplest quadratic equation or simplest form of any equation, any function, we call that the parent function. And for the quadratic equation, that's going to be y is equal to x squared. So to evaluate the equation we're going to come up with few x values and graph those points. And to do that, we're going to do the decimals, card number 1 and 2. Card number 1 says, let's get a feel for the graph of equation y is equal to x squared look like. Pick 7 numbers, then enter them as x values in the table below. Then calculate and enter their y values using the equation y is equal to x squared. Your points will automatically plotted on the graph. So example, if I chose 1 as the x value, if I substitute x to be 1, what is 1 squared? That's just going to be 1. So that's y is going to be 1. If x is 2, what is y going to be? 2 squared is 4. So if x is 2, y is going to be 4. If x is 3, what is 3 squared? That's going to be 9. Okay? All right, so it plots by itself. Okay. All right, what about, say, when x is equal to 0? 0 squared is 0. What about when x is negative 1? What is negative 1 squared? Okay, now be careful. Negative 1 squared means negative 1 multiplied by negative 1. It's not 1 squared multiplied by negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 1 is 1, positive 1, because negative times negative is going to be positive. What about negative 2? Negative 2 squared is likewise going to be 4, and negative 3 is going to be 9. Okay, now I plotted those points. Okay, so I plotted those points. Then I move on to the next. Okay, and here are your points and the actual graph of y is equal to x squared. The green line, green curve is the y equals x squared, and I've managed to get all of my points on it. That means I did all my calculations correct. Okay, what x values could you have picked to help you get the whole picture better? Okay, so perhaps you pick some numbers that were way too high, that was beyond the graph. And now we're going to try a more complicated case. Y is equal to negative x squared plus 2x plus 3. And let's discover what happens. I would like you to do card number 3 to 5, and 6 to 10 is if you finish early. Okay, so let's start with an easy number. Okay, what about when x is equal to 1? Okay, for the y value, that's going to be negative 1 squared. But to that, x is negative 1. You have to put a negative sign there because that's where the negative sign is. Okay, it's outside the x squared. Plus 2x, so that's going to be times negative 1 plus 3. So negative 1, remember, Order of operation tells us we need to do exponents before multiplication. Negative sign in front is -1 is being multiplied. So we do not multiply -1 to -1 first and then raise it to the power of 2. We need to do the exponents first. That's -1 times -1. That's +1 times -1 is going to be -1 plus 2 times -1 is -2. So -1 plus -2 is -3 plus 3 is going to be 0. Okay, what about when x is equal to 2? Okay, this time it's going to be, oh, that was -1. Okay, let's try -2. Okay, negative of -2 plus 2 times -2 plus 3. Okay, -2 squared is 4, so that becomes -4 plus -2 times -2, or 2 times -2 is -4. -4 plus -4 is -8 plus 3 is going to be 5, or -5. I'm sorry. Okay, all right, so then we could try -3. Negative of -3 all squared plus 2 times -3 plus 3. Okay, that's going to be 9, -9 plus -6. That's going to be -15 plus 3 is going to be -12. Okay, this is going to be beyond the graph. So I'm not going to continue with the negative numbers, but I should try to do more positive, like 0 and then 1 and 2 perhaps. Okay, so continue with that work and hopefully you'll be able to plot them. Okay, the next card is where you can check how you did, and my 2 points were on the graph and I should be graphing more than that. Okay, and then this it's asking for common characteristic. Now that this was the very first graph, this was the second graph that we did. Looking at both graphs of the quadratic equation, what are some common characteristics do you notice? Well, do you notice that the shape is very similar? Okay, it is curved, but it's not just like a flat curve, but it is pointy curve. But not it that does not mean it's pointy, but it is a pointy curve, and it looks like they are symmetrical, doesn't it? It looks like it's a mirror reflection. Okay, and it could be opening up or it could be opening down. Many different things you might have noticed. Okay, so graph of quadratic equations, these are the two graphs that we did see. And we call that the shape of the graph a parabola. Okay, that's a special name for the shape of quadratic equation. And we can talk about the first graph being the parabola can either open up or open down. Okay, the first graph, you can almost see it as like a ball where it's opening up. It can receive stuff. Okay, while as the bottom one, the second one, is as if the ball is put upside down. So we say this is opening down, and the first one is opening up. And but more mathematical term for it is concave up or concave down. So concave up means it's opening up, and you can kind of picture it as the happy parabola, okay, like a big smiley face. And that's how you remember is that the coefficient is positive. When there's a negative sign in front, then we say this is a sad parabola because it's concaving down. It's like a sad face. All right, a parabola will also have a vertex, maximum and minimum. Vertex is the point where the parabola changes direction. Look at this parabola. It is decreasing from here all the way down here. But then at this point, it starts to increase. It's going up. Okay, same thing here. And so where it is changing, it's called the vertex. And same thing here, it from here, this point, all the way up to this point, it is increasing from left to right, but then it starts decreasing from left to right. Okay, so at this point, we call that the vertex, okay, where the direction changes. The vertex also tells us the maximum or the minimum of the y value. Okay, so the maximum or minimum, when we are referring to that, is referring to the value of the y value. Okay, depending on whether it's opening up or opening down, you're going to have, if it's opening up, you're going to have minimum of the y value because that's the value of y and beyond which it's not going to get any lower or smaller. So it's the lowest point. Maximum, in contrast, is the highest point for the y value. Okay? All right, and then finally the line of symmetry. What is a line of symmetry? Well, parabolas also have a reflective symmetry. It's almost as if I folded this in half at the y-axis, it would match up. Okay, if I folded it in half where the equation is x is equal to 1, that would be the equation of the line, then it would match up. Okay, and that mirror line is called the line of symmetry. And the equation for this blue line will be x is equal to 0, and the equation for this line is x is equal to 1. Okay, so with that, you're going to go on to discovering parabola, concave up, down, vertex, maximum and minimum, and line of symmetry, and card 11 to 23. And I am not going to go through it because it's pretty straightforward and it walks you through all the steps as well as give you feedback. All right, so as a closure, just make sure that you have all the entries in the table of content for the past 4-5 lessons. And then it's a quiz time. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you for listening.